Hey guys, it's Betz here, doing an audio commentary for Oversharing. I'm at PDM, the studio where this was recorded. Let's start the album. I'll tell you all about it. It's going. I got a lot to say about this album because, for once, a lot of thought went into it. The practice space had a huge influence on that. I got my own space. To just appropriately start this off with oversharing, I always had an issue with having my own space. I grew up on a hippie commune with two families that had permanent residence in this big farmhouse. So there was 8 of us growing up, and then people would just come and go. For a friend to just walk in the door of my parents was just totally normal. There's these other families that were involved that basically never gave me any space. So that's why I'm so social. That's why I love people so much, and I regret nothing. But at the same time, I was well into my 20s before I had my own room, and I didn't even have a door on my room growing up until I was like 16 or something. So having my own space and being able to create here has been meaningful for me on a lot of levels. And it's also not an accident that we're like 30 seconds in and I'm already talking about childhood, because that is a major theme of this album. But yeah, not to get too into that first, I guess, yeah, I have my own room here with all the instruments. And while this is not my first rock album where I played everything, where I played all the parts, I've been doing that since I was 18. This is the first time they were all real instruments that were actually mic'd, because you have amp simulators and you have like MIDI emulators and basically computers that make sounds that sound like instruments you don't have. And just now I have my own drum kit. I have my own bass amp, guitar amp, and everything on this album is very real. And that had to do with a goal that I set out, which was to sound like an actual band making a band's album. To be completely honest, I've tried this before. That's what Trauma Journals was supposed to be. That's what Imaginary Friends was supposed to be. But I don't think I really succeeded in that. I think both those, I'm still like, this one's a folk song and this one's a punk song, and now it's a ska song all of a sudden. Like, I've always had trouble staying on track and being coherent. Like, I don't know, having a cohesive project. So, like I do everything, I just took it to like the nth degree. And when I sat down to write this album, I wrote it as one song. Save 2 songs that ended up on that were put on last. This was all written as one song. Like, so I had this ongoing Google Doc of lyrics, and I had these like little demos of riffs, and it was all building one piece that only as it moved on in months did it break into separate tracks. And foolishly, originally my plan was to literally just have it be one big track with no discernible track numbers, but I don't know. That's not necessary, honestly. Boom, that's the first song, Cannonball. It starts with a punch. I'm trying to like show you this is a punk album. For a long time I've said, like, no matter what I do, it's punk music. But what does that really mean? I mean, besides the way it's done, besides how I manufacture it, I don't know if you can actually hear punk influence on all my stuff. But this, for real, is me trying to play an indie rock album, trying to make like a pop album almost. But it sounds like the finished product. This is a punk album, but I'm cool with it. I'm finally kind of coming down from the manic phase that is making an album. And now I'm not as dedicated to the ideas as I was when I started, which was that I'm just going to sound like this from now on. But that might happen. I don't know. I might try to have like a consistent run where I make a few albums kind of like as this band. I don't know. It might happen. This song is called Child in a Flood, 1993. And not all of you probably would know, but there was a 500-year flood in Missouri, from the Missouri River and the Mississippi in 1993. I was born in '86. I was a small child, And when I look back on watching TV as a kid, which was a big part of my childhood, honestly, because my parents they're kind of hands off. One time a therapist called me a free range kid. So TV was a big part of growing up, and I have all these positive memories, but then also, once a month or so, they would be like, remember the flood of '93? And they'd play these clips of like houses being decimated and going down the river. And I think that's how I feel about childhood in general, where it's all this nice, like, it's all this nice textured, calm stuff that's all harmless. And then there's just a few things you can think of, and I'm sure everybody's like this, maybe some more than others, where you're like, wait, that was in there? That was okay? That was in the mix? And then I think also when I wrote the chorus, it was just about like how alcoholism and mental disorders are genetic. And this thing is like in my blood, like, I don't know. I watched that movie Hereditary, and I was like, oh shit, they're talking to me. So this is like my song version of the movie Hereditary. This whole thing, it's funny because like, I sat down to make this album that was as listenable as possible. I was like trying to appease people and make a nice rock album, but I'm just like permatense. The anxiety just bleeds through because I'm trying to be authentic, and I'm trying to be honest, and everything I do, it may jump around, but everything I do, I only put down if it makes me feel something. So from there, whatever your judgment of it is, that's fine. Liking it to varying degrees, but I'm not releasing anything that doesn't make me feel when I play it or when I say it. And I think that leads to some more abstract concepts and some harsher sounds that can tend to not be listenable. But I think I just have a harsh internal emotional realm going on. I don't know. That is what it is. I mean, I feel good. I feel better than I've ever felt, and I think that comes through. And but this is definitely a high-strung album, which I didn't think it would be. So it's always interesting looking back on a finished product, and it's different than what you thought it was going to be. So this song, Jesus Christ, I was raised as a Christian in a Presbyterian church, pretty liberal and everything, but okay, so now we're going to get real. You guys ready? Okay, so a few chair squeaks to lighten the mood, but when depression set in for me, it was with puberty, so I'm like, I hit puberty kind of early. So I'm like 11, 12, and it's setting in, and with that is coming the veil of illusion of my spiritual, perception coming down too, because I very literally believed in Jesus. But you got to understand, I also very literally believed in Santa. My brother's 3 years younger than me, and he had to tell me Santa wasn't real, and I think I was 9 or 10 at the time. I mean, I was scared from the Goosebumps TV show. I mean, I just took things very real and very personally, and I couldn't deal with reality very well. I wanted to believe there was heaven and things were okay, and Jesus was this guy sitting on a cloud somewhere, literally. So that all came crashing down in these horrible realizations. So this song's relating that inner child of mine losing faith, along with how I still see God. And I've been in these arguments with my mom that are funny, because I think my dad gets it more because he was raised Catholic, but just the concept of a Christian God, it's a pretty vengeful thing, man. I mean, guys, he killed everybody in a flood one time because we didn't love him enough. We weren't following the rules, so he killed everybody and then put a rainbow in the sky that said, look out, I'll do it again. Like, that's what a rainbow is if you're into Christian culture and shit, is like this, God loves us, but if you don't love God, so I don't know. I'm an anti-theist, it's like, I see the Christian God as this like daunting fucking concept that's actually pretty horrific. And I still deal with that shit. You know, that stuff stuck with you. Like, man, if you really buy into it, I don't know how anybody truly gets over it. I haven't, you know, so there it is. Made a song called Jesus Christ. A lot of fun. There's a band called Eat My Head that's these teenagers, and they are like whacked out. I guess they're not a thing anymore, but they did some shows here at PDM, and they were wild, man, like grungy, weird, like kind of like Fugazi if they didn't know how to play or something. And they had this cellist, and I stole her for this album, so I got a cellist on here, and she's in the University of Missouri Symphony Orchestra. How's that for a punk album? This song, Shitstorm, is the last thing I did. I challenged myself to make a song that was as catchy as it could be. Like I said, I wanted to make a fun, listenable album, and so I had everything done, and I was like, I loved it, but there wasn't anything that just had like a big hook. I was like, there's no big hooks. So I made this, and just did all the easiest things. I just went with the most obvious pieces, riff wise, structure wise, because that's not automatically a negative. You gotta have something that catches you. You know, if you want to weird people out, you can't just get on stage and start screaming. You have to start saying the national anthem and then shit your pants and start screaming, because now it's context. They expected something and they got something else. So you can't just be off the rails the whole time. There has to be rails. Speaking of rails, wordplay. This song's about drug addiction because, again, I just went with the most obvious. Like, that's definitely the thing I'm most familiar with writing about. And so I just did some wordplay about, like, basically the concept was like being lost at sea, but you got there because you're hitchhiking. Like, what if you had to hitchhike from boat to boat? Because that's what it feels like to really severely have like a chemical dependence. Like, when you reach the end, you're like, this just doesn't fucking work. Like, moment to moment, maybe you're okay, but like, if you ever really look at your situation, you're like, this doesn't make any sense. This is not sustainable, and I don't know how I got here. You know, that's how it ends up feeling. So trying to get that through. And then honestly, just some of the fun, like a dark fun. Drugs, to me, I think definitely not everybody. I feel like 95% of people that use drugs, like, they don't have the same double-edged sword, like, kind of feeling, because from the very beginning I always felt weird about taking drugs or drinking too much, and I always knew something was wrong, but fuck it, and this is fun, and so back and forth. So I wanted a fun yet horrific song about being lost because of addiction. I think I might have succeeded. Kind of doing a Jack White thing. I visited Third Man Studios in Nashville, and I was like, what if I just like played guitar well? What if I didn't get all weird with it? And I think the biggest influence of this album, one of my favorite bands, I've said before, they saved my life, Modest Mouse. Like, man, their first projects, like Lonesome Crowded West in particular, multiple people at PDM here with me, them hearing what I'm doing, they've compared it to that. So, yeah, wearing my influences on my sleeve. Okay, so now I'm like feeling myself, you know? You're a little nervous at first, but now I'm feeling myself. Oof, I had a day, all day. I've just had anxiety. I was just like laying in bed all day. Does that ever happen to you? Happens to me. Did it get too real? No. But I think it's appropriate that I had this very visceral day, and I'm in a vulnerable place and maybe somewhat because this album's done now and all this stuff is out there. Like, this is not my first time oversharing, but I really like tried to put it all out there. But so, like I said, sometimes when you do that, you're using specifics of your emotional internal well-being. And so when you're getting specific to yourself, maybe you're not hitting it on the nose as direct. Particularly this song, I'm worried people won't understand what I'm talking about, and it's kind of like making fun of myself and other people that live in Columbia, Missouri, that I've heard with this mentality of like, oh, I just can't get out, or I moved away and then I came back to this shithole. Like, Columbia's a fine town. Columbia's amazing. Hell, in the scope of the world, this is one of the best places to live. Even in the scope of the country, this is one of the best places to live. If you want a big city, if that's what you need to strive is a metropolitan center, then fine. But as far as just places, if you think Columbia sucks, you need to calm the fuck down and appreciate what you have, because this place is fine. And I also don't like the idea of people blaming a town for them being sucked into it, as if you just get to avoid all personal responsibility of being lazy yourself. Like, I'm not willing to take a risk, so it's my environment. Like, yeah, it's bullshit. So there's all these metaphors about, like, I trace dinner plates on my map and I wonder why I can't leave. I'm trying to follow these lines, and all these streets are one-way streets, and kind of just making fun of that mentality. So I call it townies. Not that all townies think that way, but it's just a thing that younger people do, and I did. So, like a lot of these songs, the verses are about one thing, and the choruses becomes more broad. And in this one, I'm talking about like the ghosts of town and like not understanding how big the town is. And in that, I'm talking about the racial divide, and I'm talking about what's it called? Where you move into black neighborhoods and raise the price of the rent for the people that have lived there a long time. Oh, what is that word? Yeah, but this town has been changed a lot because of that. Gentrification. Because of gentrification, this town has changed a lot. There used to be like a thriving black neighborhood with way more businesses, like just north of downtown. And then I ended up living there, and my sister had a house there, and my brother had a house there. And I was just in that neighborhood for a long time. And, 10 years ago, I was one of the only white guys, and now you go there and it's way more like just a college hipster place. And at the time I took pride in it, but now I have mixed feelings about it, for sure. And I think the ghosts of this town are those black businesses and those black neighborhoods that have now been altered or dissipated, or they're changing, and it's continuing to change. And I don't hear almost anybody talking about it. I especially don't hear white people talking about it. They probably don't even know about it. I didn't know about it when I lived there. I lived in that neighborhood. It wasn't until I moved out after living there off and on for like, God, I don't know, like 7 or 8 years that I even realized what my role was, which was a small role, or realized that it wasn't what it used to be. So sad stuff. This song has a banjo. First of all, I hadn't played banjo since I was like 18 or 19. I dated this girl from another country girl, and she used to wear overalls, and she'd go to punk events and have her overalls on and like be playing harmonica with like us like doing thrash on guitar. And so she was great, but she showed me how to play banjo, and I hadn't done it in a long time. And man, it hurts your hands. It is not easy. People, I don't know. Yeah, not to toot my own horn, but people will be like, I don't know how you make music so fast. And I'm like, it sucks. It's a lot of work. I'm working to the bone. But yeah, my hand was cramping for like a week after I played this part, because I only had one evening because it was a borrowed banjo. But I digress. This song is You Can't Get There From Here. I used to work in Rolla, Missouri. For one summer, I moved back with my parents after my freshman year at college, and I was working as a maintenance guy for the school system at Rolla. And those guys are rednecks. I mean, those guys don't give a fuck. And they really pride themselves in being clever, and they're also kind of mean. And they like, jab. They jab and they tease constantly, and they'll do it to strangers. So this funny thing would happen where if somebody came to them and they perceived as like a city person, because Rolla's a little bit of both. There's a college there. Occasionally I'd be in the work truck and somebody would be like, "Hey, excuse me, I'm trying to find the Walmart." And this guy with like chewing tobacco in would be like, "Sorry, I can't get there from here." And I thought that "can't get there from here" was the funniest way to tell someone to fuck off. Like, that is just hilarious, where it leaves you kind of like thinking like, wait a minute, it puts it on you to figure out that he said fuck off. And so I finally put that on a song, "Can't Get There From Here." And I think this song's yet again about those hard to think about places in your mind, or hard to think about experiences. For me, particularly like having so many friends that have died, and just trying to pretend like things are normal when really they're fucking weird. So maybe that's kind of like, displayed with the genre change. Like, what's this doing here? Why is this experience happening? And you have to pretend like it's normal or pretend like it fits. So there's some kind of metaphor there with rednecks and city people getting along, and like trauma and everyday life colliding. It's in there somewhere. If you figure it out, let me know. Yeah, I think that something that happened was another friend of mine died. No, but it's not like my best friend or something like that. Like I'm lucky enough to I haven't lost anybody like in my core like circle, but I know a lot of people just from so many years of partying and going to shows, and like especially the way I used to live, like I was so social. And so somebody died, and well, honestly, what happened was they had died a long time ago, but I didn't know it. I hadn't heard about it for like 5 years, and I found out that one of my old punk friends murdered another old punk friend of mine. And I'm venting, and I'm telling my girlfriend about it, and she says to me, she's listens, and she's sympathetic. And then as the conversation's ending, she's walking out of the room, and she goes, "You might just have to accept that your friends are going to keep dying." And that was just such a creepy and harsh piece of reality. Like her suggesting that piece of acceptance needed to happen. I think that song was born from that conversation. Yeah, this song's called Family Circus. And this one's about, this one's definitely steeped in metaphor to a point where I'm glad I get this opportunity to kind of explain how I see it, at least. Again, God, don't let my interpretation of lyrics you take one way ruin it for you and mean that you have to take it that way, because I'm not strictly like one-to-one metaphor with anything. It's even to me, because I've looked back at my own material and gone, oh God, so obviously this was going on and I'm talking about it. Like shit with women and addiction and mental illness and all these very specific things have been happening, and I'm writing a song about it, and I'm like, these are just words, or this is about how what people go through this, or I don't know, it gets jumbled up there, right? This thing's just an ether we're pulling from. It's not up to me, it's not up to you. We're all just in it, feeling it. It's our frontal lobes connecting in some kind of ghost realm we aren't allowed to ever fully see or understand. That being said, the song is about growing up in a hippie commune, and it's called Family Circus because it's like, well, honestly, I had a friend that I related to, a friend of Libby's, actually, a friend of my girlfriend. She was literally raised in the circus and would travel, and we were talking about it and relating my unique family, childhood experience to hers on the road with these, like, Russians and just outsiders of society, and these things that were similar, outsiders of society being around us at a young age. And there being lots of art and expression and vibrance in our lives. And after about 20 minutes of saying the fun stuff, it got down to the trauma. And I can't believe I was exposed to A, B, and C and being like me and her connecting. So that song is kind of me comparing my life to hers and comparing these traumatic childhoods and that were unique and double edged. So, Family Circus. I should mention my friend Tyler Harms, who was in an amazing band called Fourth and Long that I used to. I want to say I roadied for them when I was like 15 and 16, but really they just let me tag along to St. Louis. We'd go to we'd go to the Creepy Crawl and these cool venues in St. Louis, and they would let me help load their gear in, and I would watch them play. But anyway, Tyler did backing vocals. We reconnected all these years later, 15 years later, and he got to do vocals on this, and he really made that song. So the other guest appearance from Fox Teeth is Marissa Wood doing vocals on Townies, and she did them on my back porch so you can hear crickets on that song, which I think is pretty cool and telling about from the perspective of people complaining about how small their town is, than hearing the crickets of nature, even though I live downtown. Every time I hear it, I go, oh, that works perfect. This last song is also about childhood. This one probably the most directly. I just wrote a whole bunch of series of like vague truths about kind of like being the middle child of the four that was on the farm and trying to get attention and misbehaving for attention and getting into entertainment. You know, I used to put on magic shows with my brother. We'd put up like a sheet over chairs to have a backdrop, and we'd like do costume changes and pop up and do these like card tricks. And I really wish there was footage of it, but and do just like comedy shows, memorize jokes. And God, we were super into that from a super young age. So this is about that in a blender with neglect and trauma. The other interesting thing on the technical side of this is that I kind of was just nitpicking with the album for like a week before I went into the studio to mix it. No major changes, just you know, a little bit of editing here, trimming this, turning that down, turning this up. But then the night before I was in the studio, I just got a hair and I was like, this needs something. And I banged out this piano part, which is like at the forefront of the whole thing. So the piano wasn't there until the night before, which is a big decision. If you've ever recorded music, you know that's like kind of a kind of a bold choice to be like, fuck it, piano. I'm not a great piano player. I'll tell you, it's just one chord banging out for like the verses. And why that is when I play piano parts that are like 4 chords, 5 chords, I'm so inconsistent at changing positions on the piano, just like actually playing it through, that I'll play one chord and record all of that, and then play another chord and record all of that, and then in editing make it sound like I'm changing chords, which I've heard a lot of people actually do. But it's just easier than learning the part. You know what you want, so you get it out however you can. Anyhow, I'd played all the chords, and when I went to edit it, I just played it with the first chord, and I was like, oh, that's weird. So I kept it. And it works. It's zony. I think this is the song you can most hear about how this was originally like transitions of like all one big song. This like the most has that vibe for sure. I was going to say Will Reeves at Centro Cellar Studios is who mixed this, and he's just a fucking beast. This thing was 8 songs, and he did it in like just over 4 hours. So like for half an hour a song, he reworked, you know, everything, which is just pretty incredible. So I was really impressed with him, and then somehow we were also like holding a somewhat normal conversation through that and just like hanging out, and it was casual and cool. You know, for me at the pace I tend to work with, it can get tense and I can be demanding, which is a lot of times why I like to work alone, because I just want to get it done and I make decisions and roll with them and we're doing it. And man, Will was just cool with it. And he he's recorded a bunch of bands that I'm friends with and fans of, including like the whole Dog Pound crew, which is the Blue Fugue guys, which most specifically is Hoot and Hollers, Lunar Mansion, and all those guys, all those kind of more stompgrass, freak folk rock stuff. That's like the most popular music that Columbia's produced while I've been here. He's done all that stuff. Awesome studio. Awesome studio. Ton of great space. But, you know, the thing to do is just save money by taking your time, because this shit is layered. Some of these songs have like 20 guitar parts. This thing's fucking dense, so if I were to try to do it all in the studio, it would have been impossible. It wouldn't have worked. Hey, this is about the end of the album. What can I say that I haven't said already? If you're listening to this, feel free to message me. I feel like we know each other already. This isn't a one-way street. Let's talk about it. People that get back to me tend to talk about like mental disorders and addiction and relate on that element. I'm always happy to talk about that, give you advice, or you could give me some advice. And that's it, guys. I'm so happy that you took your time to listen in, and I hope you like the album. God knows I put some hours in to try to share something. So straight from my heart to yours, or at least from my heart to your ears, I hope you liked it. Kelly Betz, see ya.